I reiterate some of the things that we've talked about before, but I want us to be prepared for the vote tomorrow night, and I think this is going to be part of it. We have a number of the primary decision makers and chairs of the various committees that are in charge of the process of building a temporary station, a permanent station, and a library. But we'll have questions for probably for each of you, but I hope that we can do it in a somewhat ordered manner. So I'm going to go through one by one and ask questions that I have and invite the committee to ask questions. And you know, because we're virtual, we can call someone back and ask a question that might have slipped our minds. But I hope that we can kind of do it in an orderly fashion. So I want to start, I think, with the chair of the Library Building Committee, Ed Berlin. And so I want to welcome Ed to the meeting. Hi, Ed. Don't forget to unmute.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for being here. I thought we'd start with you because the library and the fire station building projects are intertwined, as we know at this point. So I am, like I said, gonna reiterate. A lot of these questions will be ones you've heard before. So that said, I hope we can, don't feel free to give brief answers, one or two sentences, sound bites. I just want to make sure that we cover our bases, and so that anyone watching at home who maybe hasn't tuned in all year can get a sense of how we got to where we got. So Ed, first question: Could the city save money by renovating the library rather than building a new one?
It would cost the city more money to renovate the library than to build a new one. The estimates we got a year ago for renovating the old library were about $8.6 million. If we are able to start and finish the new library on time, our budget was $19.5 million, from which we're getting $9.4 million from the state. That leaves about $10.1 million. And I'm happy to say that the Greenfield Public Library Foundation is well on its way to reaching their goal of raising $2 million, which we had said would be used to offset the cost of the library to the city. So the projected cost to the city would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 million, whereas the cost to renovate the old library would be about $8.6 million. Plus, we've already spent close to $1 million on the new library building project. If we weren't going to go forward with that, we would have to return that money with interest.
Thank you. So I want to give everyone on the committee, obviously, a chance to ask questions. And some of the ones that I'll ask have been compiled from ones that were submitted by counselors. But first, I want to ask the committee. Do you have questions for Chair Berlin? Okay, so I will continue with mine, but please feel free to jump in if you have follow-up questions on anything that he says, or if one occurs to you. So another question, Ed, is why can't a smaller library be built for a lower cost?
The short answer is that we would lose our grant. The longer answer is that the original plan for the library was based on national standards. And the original plan was to build a library of 32,000 square feet. we were told by feedback that we got from the community as well from then Mayor Martin, there was a lot of pressure to reduce the size. We got permission from the state to allow us to reduce the size about 15%. So it was reduced to 26,800 square feet. Our project was originally $21 million, but the mayor put in the bond number of 19.5. So we've also reduced our costs from 21 million to 19.5.
Thank you. Again, these are questions that I keep hearing from residents. One of the things that people have a lot of questions about is Hope Street, because residents are concerned with saving taxpayers money, as I think we are. So why can't a library be built on Hope Street or on Coombs Avenue? Why does it have to be built at the location on Main Street?
Again, the simple answer is we would lose our grant. Our grant was site specific. Historically, the MBLC has made it absolutely clear that you have to commit to a site before you file for your grant application. They had an unfortunate incident with another city, and they were not going to do that again. So we just can't change the site.
Thanks. So follow-up question to that I hear from a lot of constituents is, why can't we ask our legislators, Senator Comerford or Rep. Mark, to file special legislation to put off the deadline indefinitely?
We could do that. From everything I understand is that they would be powerless to have the MBLC ordered to give us an extension. But more importantly than that, it would require an extension of at least 2 to 3 years. And given the projected escalation cost, that would result in the additional expense to build a new library of at least $2 million, which is a little bit more than the projected cost of the temporary fire station. So that the city could very well end up spending more money to delay our library and build a temporary as opposed to the other alternative.
Thanks. Last question for you. Why the need for a temporary fire station?
So I can't really answer this in 1 or 2 sentences, just if you can indulge me a little bit. The fact that the library would need the space for the fire station on a certain date should come as no surprise to anyone. The library went through an extensive process in determining where our site would be located, getting feedback from hundreds of people from the town by way of online surveys and personal comments to the library. But people wanted it to be downtown and on a municipally owned property. At the time, Mayor Martin really pushed us to choose the site that we chose. He thought, and he's probably right, that by choosing the site, it would really give leverage to getting the fire station built also. So there was a political calculation made then, but it was really done so that the city could also get a fire station. As early as 2016, the city had made it clear to the state that this property would be available for the library on a timely manner. In fact, Mayor Martin wrote a letter to the MBLC dated January 13th of 2016. And when we submitted our grant in January of 2017, there is language in it that says Mayor Martin has assured the library that even if town council does not approve the plans for a new public safety complex, he will move the fire department to a temporary location to make way for construction of the new library. This grant application was signed by 20 different people in the city, including the mayor, the finance director, and the auditor. So the city made a commitment back then, and this is just the city honoring the commitment that it made. So It was all along expected, and unfortunately, the council didn't approve the proposal that the mayor had for the fire station. If that had been approved, there would have been no need for a temporary fire station. So there's the history there, and we cannot build the library with the fire station being there for two reasons. According to our project manager, the absolute most important reason is safety. Um, the fire trucks will be going in and out, or mostly out on emergencies at a time when there could be as many as 100 different workers on the site with their materials spread all over, maybe on scaffolding, and that really presents a danger. And secondly, in order to do it, we would need staging in another area of town. And we also couldn't even finish our project on time because we need to use the space occupied by the fire station for a corner of our building, as well as most of our parking. So that would encompass a delay, which would also cost money. And ultimately, our project manager thinks it would cost about $2 million in addition if we were to attempt to do this building with the fire station still standing.
Thank you. So ultimately, no savings there. That's all the questions that I have for you, Ed. Do committee members have any questions for Chair Berlin? Councillor Forgy.
Hey, thank you. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Chris.
If does anybody know if we weren't able to secure this grant, what would be an appropriate price tag for a new library? Does anybody know that? Doesn't have to be Ed. It could be anybody.
Well, it would depend on the size of the library, I guess.
Right.
I mean, we're talking in round figures, a $20 million library at 26,800 square feet. That, according from the point of view of our library director, is probably as small as you really can go to be adequately have to service the people of Greenfield. So if that's the case, and you were going to build it using public funds, then the price would be about 20 million bucks.
Can I do a follow-up, please?
Yes.
Okay. So my question, there's a lot of talk out there in the community, and the question revolves around the fact that the council took the vote. It was challenged by citizens. It ended up as a ballot question. Why, I mean, why wasn't the project the project presented in jointure at that time?
I can't answer that question. My job was to promote the library and to build a new library, and that's what we were doing. There didn't seem to be an issue with regard to the fire station. They were really separate at that point in the sense the fire station had its funding, and we were proceeding to get permission to go forward with our funding.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chair Berlin? All right. I think that's it for the moment. If you'll hang on, Ed, we may come back to you, but I just wanted to ask you those for some background to get to how we got to where we are with the fire station. Obviously, there's just a huge amount of background there. At one point, we were talking about a public safety complex, and when it became clear that that wasn't fiscally realistic, we cut back. So we have a number of important people who were involved in the fire station planning present. I know we have Neil Joyce, we have Chief Strand, I believe, as well as some firefighters. I think I'm going to start by welcoming Chair Singer, who David Singer is the chair of the fire station, co-chair of the fire station building committee. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
if you feel free to defer any of these questions to Neil or otherwise. I do have some separate questions for the chief, but I thought I'd give you the bigger picture ones, and allow committee members to ask some as well. So one question that I'm asked a lot by people in the community is, why can't a permanent station be built on Hope and Prospect Street? Can you answer that?
I can answer it as an advocate, but I would defer to Neil because I think he has the specifics about it. My understanding is that it would cost a lot more money than we have budgeted to go that from temporary to permanent. So Neil, can you help me out on that, or help the counselors out on that, please?
Sure. We did an exercise. We sited the building on the lot. We ran some temporary numbers. We used the same square foot cost that we were estimating for the building at Main and Coombs. The topography of the site at Hope and Prospect required us to consider a two-story building, which enforced a premium over the single-story building that's contemplated at Main and Coombs. In addition to that, because of the sloping terrain and in protecting the uphill properties located to the east of the site, there would have to be enhancements, or the foundation system would have to be enlarged, as well as a temporary retaining wall in place in order to facilitate the construction at the station. Long story short, between the complications of the earthwork, the temporary structures, as well as the cost impact to the building, we estimated roughly $2.5 million in premium to build that same station on Hope and Prospect as compared to Main and Coombs.
Thank you. And so there's no cost savings, it would cost more. And am I correct that the location is not preferred in general by the committee or the chief?
I would defer to the chief.
Okay, I'll ask him that question when at a later date when we get there. Councillor Forgy?
Yes, Neil, when you were speaking, you were referring to a building premium. I'm not sure I know what that is. Can you help me?
So we anticipated roughly 20,000 square feet, and we were calculating a unit price of roughly $500 a square foot. For a two-story building, there is a premium over a one-story building. And in addition to that, there were several site-related premiums that were unique to Hope and Prospect when compared to Main and Coombs. So we tried to itemize what those premiums were, assuming all else being equal.
Is a premium a dollar amount or
Yes.
okay. All right, thank you.
Here's another question that I hear a lot. Why couldn't we build the library on Hope and Prospect or Coombs and Main and build the fire station where it is now at the current location on Main Street? So ignoring the library piece of that, could you answer it from the fire station point of view? Would that save the need for a temporary station?
Don't they call that Monday morning quarterbacking?
I do. But I'm putting you on the spot because this is Ways and Means.
There's no question that in a vacuum, the fire station could remain at its current site. I mean, why not? There's a big piece of land there. Why shouldn't it or couldn't it be built there? But the plan all along, or as it evolved, was for the library to be built first, and then for the fire station to have its ability to move, and then the library to build after. To answer Chris's question, and this is not a judgment, it's just my memory of facts. When the library vote took place and the petition was filed and it was clear that there was going to be a referendum, the city council, and you can speak for yourself in your own memory, Mr. Chair, decided in its wisdom that it wasn't going to fund the fire station at all at that point to do any preliminary work. So the whole fire station piece was on hold. So really what happened is the fire station came first. The plan was rejected by the council. The library then got up to speed. It got stuck in the referendum. The fire station wasn't funded. The library got the referendum. By the time the fire station was funded, COVID had arrived, and the plan that we had was put on the side. And so everybody's really now it's the library that's ahead of the fire station, and its grant is in peril. So we want to build the library, and we want to build the fire station. And so this is the only way to do it. The temporary fire station, keeping it as the plans are, that's the only way to do it at this point without lots and lots of problems, which I don't think anybody wants to have. And I think we have, except for the temporary, I think everything is really moving along very well. And if the community could just appreciate that sometimes events happen that put things a little out of whack. And at this point, with the COVID about ready to be resolved and the economy hopefully moving into a next level, we will be ahead of all the other construction projects, and we'll be able to do what I know everybody in Greenfield wants us to do, is to bring these projects in at or under cost. And I think at the end of the day, that's really where the power is with us. We don't have any more power to do the things that these questions are asking us. Those, what do they call it? That horse is out of the barn, or that ship has sailed, or whatever the cliche is. So all we have the power to do, I think, is to make sure that what we do now, we do within the budgets that we've presented. And I believe we can, if you're willing and able to vote, and we're able to move on the time schedules that we present.
Thank you.
That wasn't a
Chair
short
Singer.
answer, but
No, that was a good answer. Councilor Forgy has a question.
The question is for the mayor.
I believe that's okay. The mayor is on the call.
Okay.
Hi there.
We're going to get to her eventually. We might as well start now.
Okay. Hi, Mayor.
Hi there, Chris,
One of the things,
counselor.
thank you. One of the things that, as I'm going back and I'm trying to make decisions here and everything else. One of the things that was said early on by the council was that they needed a lot more information before a vote would happen. And we do have a lot more information than we did before. One of the other things some of the counselors said was we have to have a permanent location before we approve a permanent borrowing. Is there anything that you can comment on?
Oh, well, that last part was kind of open-ended, but thank you for the question.
Okay.
I understand that desire for sure. I just want to be very clear about the fact that we are moving forward quite successfully with the negotiations for the property at Main and Coombs.
Okay.
I'm not at liberty, because that negotiation isn't finished, to give you a lot of detail, but we do have a signed letter of intent to purchase, both by myself and the property owners. We're now in the due diligence phase. So for those of you who may not do real estate every day, The due diligence phase is the phase at which the buyer has the opportunity to explore the property stem to stern for any kind of additional issues that might arise. Primarily, we're talking about environmental issues, drainage issues, all of those things. There's a series of tests that need to occur from an environmental standpoint, because we certainly don't want to do a final yes on a property that has some environmental issues that we would be required to pay for going forward. So the due diligence phase involves checking the title, creating the purchase and sale agreement, and doing all of those tests. The tests are being paid for out of the budget of the fire station that we currently have, so the $10 million. Those tests are being handled by Dennis Ross of Pacheco Ross. So the architect is required under this, in consultation with our OPM, to conduct those tests. And that's about to happen very shortly. So I just want to make sure that you and the rest of the members on the council, and certainly the community, understand that that property is being fully vetted, and it is the preferred property, and Chief can address that later for a variety of reasons that are more pertain to how the fire station needs to work than whether I care whether it's the best property or not, but I happen to believe that it is. So, yes, we are advancing in that, but real estate, particularly at this level, it's not like, it is a little bit like buying a house, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. So we are, for those of you who may think of it more as, we are in the inspection phase of that property. And, you know, all parties have been notified as to when that will need to happen.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So any more questions for Chair Singer before we move on?
Co-chair.
Co-chair, yes, and we have
My co-chair is here.
we have your co-chair, Butch Hawkins.
Halfway
Welcome,
around the
Butch.
world. If he wants to speak, I would love to give him a chance, or maybe not. But he and I are working together on this.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a broad question because I know, Chair Hawkins, that you've been involved with this longer than anyone, and really for all along in the quest to build new public safety facilities for Greenfield. So do you feel like the plans that we have so far for a permanent station, and do you feel like with this vote to appropriate tomorrow night, that would put your committee in a position to build a facility that you could be proud of for the Greenfield Fire Department?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. You know, Public Safety Commission has been working on the project since 2009 as a complete project, but given the reality of things and the real need for the fire station, you know, in how big it is, how unsafe it is really for the employees. The additional money, put with the roughly 10.5 million we have, you know, given our commitments for a temporary and to purchase, I do feel, because I have a long experience with the architect that we have and shorter experience with the OPM, that it is an adequate amount to provide a top quality facility for the city of Greenfield. And the site, I think, you know, is an excellent site for a standalone fire station. So yeah, I highly support it. And so do the members of, if I can speak for them, the Public Safety Commission, who's worked on it for a long time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Chair Hawkins while we have him here? Okay.
I have one.
Yeah. Is that Councilor Elmer?
It is, yeah, on a telephone, sorry. One of the frustrations of mine and many other council members was that we voted a budget that earmarked, is that the right verb? $10 million for the fire station, and it was a shock to discover that that was nowhere near what the cost was going to be. How did that happen?
I can only respond by saying it happened in a vacuum with the previous mayor. You know, several years ago in the capital budget, there was 17 million put in for hard cost copy with, you know, hard cost without the purchase or a temporary facility for a full public safety complex. So the money was woefully, you know, way less than it was needed for either part of the project or whole of the project. But the Public Safety Commission was not involved in those decisions at all. That was presented to us at a later time. So I just can't give you an answer to why that figure was put in there, but or what it was based on. I have no idea what it was based on.
To clarify, could I follow up?
Yes.
Sure.
So are you saying that there was a $17 million figure proposed, but that it didn't make it into the budget? That at some point $7 million was lopped off?
Yes, several years ago, probably, let's see, 09, probably around 2013 or 14, when we were looking at a public safety complex, a figure was put in capital for 17 million. And then it just expired because it's usually a 5-year plan and then it goes away. And the previous mayor then asked city council for, I think, 5.5 for 500,000, a little over 500,000 for design and OPM services, which wasn't enough for those either. And then later put in a figure for 10 million for the project, and that was not enough either. But we had no input or say into that.
Thank you.
Thank you for addressing that. I think the mayor had her hand up. Did you like to speak to that as well, Mayor?
I would only add, I support what Butch said. I certainly, and I want to make clear that previous mayor was Mayor Martin involved in this. I want to make it clear that I accepted the price of $10 million in the capital budget last year, which the budgets had already been moving along at its appointed schedule. Ways and Means will understand what I mean by that, as will the members of the Capital Committee that are on this meeting, as a given, because I thought that it had been vetted properly. And it did depend on a couple of different factors, and that is that it was going to go on Riddell Street, and that we would have a city-owned piece of property available for a temporary. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that a temporary was always in the picture. It just turned out because of, I guess, for lack of a better word, discussions with the full committee about what and work by our OPM on what in today's dollars a fire station would cost. And also understanding that it was all of the previous mayor's plan, which wasn't a bad plan. It just was a plan that was set in place at a point in time. And that point in time changed dramatically by the time that I took office. So that plan was to put it on Riddell Street. There was an earmark through the state legislature to clean up Riddell Street in order to make it okay for us to put a fire station there. That earmark did not come through because by the time we had gotten around to needing it and asking for it, and I did approach Secretary Keneally of Department of Economic and Community Development at the state level, who is the one whose earmark was directed at, and all of our legislators, as to how I would go about now accessing that $2.5 million to clean up that site. I'm not certain that the $10 million was ever a real figure that we could build a fire station with in today's dollars, but I was willing to roll with that. So I never questioned the $10 million. It was sort of baked into the capital budget by the time I got there. And this is just background so that people understand. And I think I've answered this question a couple of times, but I do think it's important to talk about it again. All of those things changed, and I have no problem with blaming it on COVID because I was told directly by Secretary Keneally's office that given the uncertainty of the financial situation of the state, that the money for cleaning up Riddell Street would not be forthcoming. And I also want to add that that was just the tip of the iceberg for Riddell Street. There is every reason to believe, and I do have a report about this wide from Ty and Bond that says there is likely a great deal more contamination on that property. So I'm just adding to the question, or adding in part of an answer with context that brings us up to today. And that is why our building committee began looking for an alternative, understanding that we do need to have a new fire station. And now what we're faced with tonight is the alternative that we've come up with.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And for our purposes tonight, the reason that that background is relevant is so that we don't repeat that mistake. I think from my standpoint, as goes my involvement in that decision-making process for the 10 million, I'm used to making sure that people aren't asking for too much money for a project, not too little, because it's rare that they're motivated to ask for too little. And a mistake that was made in that process was not including all of the stakeholders, including Chair Hawkins, who is at the table now, and as are just so many stakeholders. And that's why, is so that we don't make another mistake like that, so that we are sure that we're doing our due diligence, that an appropriate amount of money could be appropriated for the facilities that we want. So I think I would like to invite Chief Strand to speak if he's still on the call. Chief, are you there?
I am.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I'm sure we'll have a few questions for you, but I'll start with the broad one. Just if the council votes tomorrow to approve this additional $6 million, are you confident that it will be sufficient to build a modern fire station that will meet Greenfield's needs in the 21st century?
The short answer is yes, and not only the permanent building, but also the temporary.
Great.
I can expand on that if you want, but the short answer is yes. From the work that our architect did and our OPM has done and the committee has done, and everything that we've done so far, I am confident that barring any major unforeseen event, the budget that we're asking for is the budget.
Great. I love a concise answer. Before I ask if anything else, does anyone else on the committee have questions for the chief? Councillor Forgy. Oh, you're on mute.
I always have questions. Okay. Chief, I'd like to know, given the current state of the fire station and its age, if this vote did not pass tomorrow night, what would be, in your estimate, the dollar amount that it would take to repair this building to bring it up vis-a-vis safety, codes, those kinds of things? Is there an estimate that it would cost if we didn't move forward on a new project?
So several years ago, there was a letter that was presented by our architect with exactly that question, and the ballpark was in the $10+ million range, and was the end of the letter said, just keep in mind though, that is just to fix what you currently have, not modernize to a new fire station. And when you open up, the day one you open up, you're opening up an obsolete fire station.
Thank you, Chief.
So if I could, Counselor, I just wanted to take a second and go over some of the questions that you were going to defer to me.
Yes, please.
So I'll quick answer them.
Save me some work.
Yeah, no problem. So the first one is that I just like to make a quick statement and say that every change that we've made in the last decade, we have made because there has been a more cost-effective alternative. Whether it's with the Riddell Street property, when we started seeing that the earmark was gone and the hazardous materials costs and, bringing in materials to bring up the land, it actually, believe it or not, was cheaper to look at purchasing the land because there was no town owned land. And so every single decision that has been made with this project has been made with the taxpayers in mind. I know that it doesn't always seem that way, but every single decision is based on what is the best use of our dollars. So I first wanted to say that. The second thing is that the current location of the firehouse, there was a question of why it couldn't be there. First of all, when we did a study back in 2012, out of, I think it was a dozen sites, it was the absolute last site that was identified as. None of the sites that were on the list are there anymore because they've all come and been sold. But that was the last one on the list. And as far as costs go with that, we're going to run into the same costs that we would run into Hope Street. If you know our current firehouse, we sit on a basement, right? A new firehouse typically doesn't sit on a basement, and so the cost of that would be pretty substantial, and probably not the best for modern fire apparatus to be, have a basement underneath it. And then the Hope Street lot, for a temporary location, it is okay. It's not the preferred place for a permanent location. And at the end of the day, it's substantially more money for us to develop that piece of property than it would be for Coombs Ave. I hope that answered the questions.
Yes, it does. And then I think you answered it already briefly, but I'm going to ask it again. From what you know of the plans for the temporary fire station, do you think it'll provide safe and adequate facilities for your firefighters?
Sure. So I'll quick address that. So from a general living quarters situation, although a little bit tighter than what we're used to, the temporary is actually going to have modern amenities that we don't have, like a reliable heat system and air conditioning. And reliable plumbing. So it's in a sense, it's I hate to say it's a step up because it's not. We have much more space where we are versus the temporary. But as I said from day one, that the city has spoken and they want a new library. And part of that is for us to move, and we as the fire department stand ready to move into a temporary home. With the finish line of being a permanent firehouse. So yes, I will also mention, because this was a question that has been brought up to me from several counselors, and I will say it in the public forum. The reason why we're doing 2 apparatus bays on that site is because 1 apparatus bay won't fit in one of the lots. It's simply about size and not any other factor. And so rest assured that the fire chief will make sure that fire code is followed and done appropriately. But the size of the building is because of the locations of the building, and we can't fit a one big large structure on just one level. So that's why it's being divided up into two.
Thank you. Any more questions for the chief? Councillor DeSorger.
Actually, this might be for you, Councillor Wheeler, and also for the chief. But when we were doing our budget, then were you served on the capital improvement committee? So
Yes.
you were giving us the recommendation. Did you understand that we were going to be having a temporary fire station too, like was said just a few minutes ago?
Yes. If you, I made a statement at some point during the capital process that while it might be possible to do this without a temporary station, I didn't see a way. And that's in the minutes of one of the meetings. So it wasn't generally agreed at that point that there had to be temporary. I know there were hopes that we could get around it, but it was my opinion at that point that temporary would be necessary one way or another. I understand all of the hesitation and dismay that the public feels around it, but in the big picture, my feeling has always been that anything else to go in a different direction would cost more. The loss of the library grant, which by the way pays for the demolition of the current fire station, it would all just kind of domino effect into higher costs. So yes, it was, in my opinion, necessary back when we made the initial $10 million order.
Counselor, if I could jump in for a second.
Yeah.
Temporary quarters for a fire department is not an uncommon situation. I know that there is at least 8 projects within the Commonwealth that are either in temporary or just leaving temporary quarters. Most of the time it's due to renovations, but it's not uncommon for a temporary quarters like this to be erected. As a matter of fact, the company that we're using or may use, depending on how the bids go, that's one of the things they do regularly is across the country put up these temporary structures for fire departments.
Thank you. Councillor DeSorger.
Follow up, if I may. No, I did read that oftentimes that happens. I had been a fair amount about them. I actually went back and watched again. I didn't recall that part about any figure being put in for that, but that's okay. I did, may I make one other comment, Councilor Wheeler?
Yes, of course.
I wanted to validate what something that Ed Berlin said. We were talking about the grants. I actually reached out to Senator Comerford's office. Interestingly, other counselors also had done the same thing, and she assured me that she would be looking out for any extra funding for this project, for the city in any extra way. She actually, because somebody else had called prior to me, she had reached out to the MBLC also. And I just wanted to say that publicly because I think it helps a little bit. He said they're dependent on the federal, they get their money federally because of what they give out each year. And if they're not giving it out, they will not get the same amount. And I think that that's a little piece to put into the picture, that we would all know that, and that she said she would be working very diligently on behalf of Greenfield. That's all.
And
Thank you.
Kepler,
Yeah, thank you for
if
that.
I could, I just want to point out that we also have several members of the fire department joining the meeting tonight as well. Just to let you know, I know the union president is also on this on the meeting as well.
Thank you for pointing that out. Welcome. For the department. Councilor Forty, did you have a question related to what we were just talking about?
Yes, I did. Somebody mentioned that I think it was you, Chairman Wheeler, that the cost of the demolition of the fire station is coming out of the library funding for the project. Do we know how much that demolition is going to be?
Good question, Councilor Forty. So that's been my understanding of it, and I see that Chair Berlin has papers in his.
It's here somewhere, Chris. I'm looking for it. I will get back to you with an exact figure, but I think it's around $250,000.
It might be, it might be good to let folks know that, because it shows that there's a participation between both entities, and also that we are trying to keep costs contained.
If it's okay with the council, I will send an email to Councilor Wheeler when I get that number.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Does anyone have or that
You're
You're
breaking
breaking
up.
up.
You're breaking up. Yeah.
You're breaking up, Counselor Wheeler.
Um, Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The battery was dying on the computer, and for some reason it was fouling everything up. So thank you for your patience.
It's
Does
okay.
anyone have any questions for Chief Strand? I think was the last thing I had asked. If not, it may be time to get into the fiscal side of things and to invite Director Gilman on. Director Gilman, welcome. So we had a number of questions submitted for you, and we'll take turns asking you questions, I'm sure. I'll start with one about free cash. The city recently had $2.8 million certified in free cash, which is a good thing, of course. And the question is, why is that? Why was that much certified? And does the administration have a plan for it, for how to use it?
Yes, it actually was 2 years worth of free cash, and the mayor and I are reviewing the amounts, but the focus will be on stabilization accounts for those funds.
Mm-hmm. Great. Do other counselors have questions for Director Gilman? Counselor Forgy.
Hi. Hello. So what happens I'm a little confused. I thought that every year we have to certify free cash. You say that this is a figure that's based on 2 years. Can you tell me what happened?
Well, without getting into great detail, I kind of walked into a backlog halfway through fiscal 19.
Okay.
Almost a year.
That's when you came on board?
Yes.
Okay.
And so the way it worked out was a bonding was not able to be accomplished until August of 2019. And it just put things behind. And the Department of Revenue, besides, if you don't know, I just want to back up a bit and just say the free cash comes from departments turning back money and local receipts being over budget or coming in over budget.
Mhm.
And that the other factors is temporary cash flow issues with grant reimbursements and capital projects. And in this instance, it was capital projects because of the bonding.
Thank you.
And I'm muted. Any other questions on free cash or any other questions for Director Gilman? Councillor DeSorger.
Hey there, Director Gilman. Thank you so much. I have several questions actually. So I was delighted to hear that we had that much in free cash. That's wonderful. And I put in writing to you. I looked at, through our plan of what we're supposed to have, in regular stabilization. I don't think we have probably like 650 or something in capital stabilization. But my question was, if we put like a couple of million into that, I think I wrote this to you. If we put a couple of million into capital stabilization, then when the borrowings are actually due, because these two buildings, well, maybe say it's 22, 23, that we're actually going to be borrowing, whatever that is, then could we we would have to borrow that amount and then we'd be saving that interest. Is that something that you think would be a good idea? And the second part of that is, if you were to go into stabilization, were you actually meaning capital stabilization, and would you be saving it in there or using it for these building projects? That's that first question.
Okay, I'm just going to start off with what our policy is, which is 5%. The figure of 1.5 million is an old figure. If you do 5%, we really should be at 3 million. So that's just to bring that into line, and that is what the Department of Revenue recommends. And yes, I was speaking of multiple stabilizations. The city also has a policy of replenishing what was taken out of stabilization, so that needs to occur. As you know, our capital stabilization needs funds in it. Our contract stabilization needs funds in it. I also am an advocate, which I have talked with counselors about prior, of having a pension stabilization, which may go into your other question. So, and overall, the higher stabilization is also looked favorably upon by the rating agencies. So the plan is to put the funds in various stabilizations.
And just as, and I do want to let you ask a follow-up, Councillor DeSorger, but first I just want to clarify that, of course, that requires a council vote to appropriate to, so just so councillors know, this isn't just one person snaps their fingers and makes a decision. There's a whole process here. We'll talk about it, but it's a great question to ask now so we can have an idea of what we might consider going forward as the best use of those funds. So Councillor DeSorger, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, and I did realize that would be something that was not my decision. It was just a question about how it was going to be spent, and we needed order, etc. And I did notice that although it says 150,000 in the handbook, that we previously had much more than that, and that we've been depleting that. So our stabilization has been going down. So my question is, do you have any concerns about do you have any concerns about the trends that we've had in continuing to take from our stabilizations? Do you have any concerns about our revenues for this year?
For 21, I think there's a lot up in the air. However, again, I will advocate that's just another reason to put more in stabilization and put everything in stabilization. The trends, because we didn't have free cash from 19 in a year, we had no choice but to go to general stabilization in many instances that we weren't able to replenish. So I felt very good at the amount we did certify, and I again felt that put the city in a very good place for 22, in addition, to the reductions that we had made. So I'm hearing a little back. I don't know if anyone else is hearing it. I really feel that the city is on a good track. Yes, everyone's saying 22 will be a challenge, but I feel we're in the best position to handle it, honestly. And that's why I would advocate putting as much in stabilization as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Forgy. Oh, you're on mute.
You mentioned something, Liz, about putting money aside in a pension reserve fund. Is there any thought to reducing the pension liability with some of this stabilization?
The liability, we have a funding schedule that we must follow.
Right.
So it wouldn't do anything. We would still have to follow that schedule. But what I am advocating for is for council to approve a pension stabilization that can assist with that funding schedule. That is what I'm advocating. The funding schedule goes over the next 14 years.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I believe that Ways and Means will have a detailed discussion about that as it if we get to the point where it's proposed, and I hope we do, we'll talk about it. But I've sat down with the auditors and had conversations with Liz where I've basically been convinced that it would be a good idea because it would have benefits in terms of the funding schedule, the interest that would be accrued in the account, and it could be taken out. It's not, a 2/3 vote of council could take money out of this potential pension stabilization fund. So I would expect that it's something we'll talk about because I think there could be a lot of benefit to it. So
Sorry,
Liz.
as Councilor Wheeler stated, council has to approve all this. It would be a new stabilization, and just like we did with the OPEB stabilization, came to you last year with that, to council. So.
Yeah. Okay. Councilor Forgy.
Chairman Wheeler, I want to know is, for instance, I already know that if the vote tomorrow night does not pass, the mayor cannot introduce that vote again for 9 months. Is that the same for every money vote or just for borrowing votes?
No, that is actually, I don't believe it's even restricted to money votes. That is council. There's a rule that applies to ordinances as well. Items that come before council, motions and orders that come before council cannot be reintroduced in substantially the same form is the language that is used within 9 months.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. More finance questions? Councilor DeThorger.
Yeah, so I put this in writing also, and I asked the total amount of that anticipated borrowing that we would have, and what is that figure with this 25? I think we maybe approved 3 million worth this year besides that, but with the 25, say it was 15 for this because the other's a bond premium and 10 for the library. With that new 25 million, what's the anticipated borrowing, the full amount of the anticipated borrowing?
Oh, okay, for just the fire station and the library, or just?
No, altogether. I wanted to know altogether. I think I wrote that. I want to know altogether what the figure was.
Right. So
the website it says 35,000. I mean 35 million, but that was an older figure, and I thought you'll have the current figures.
So I actually took it out through 2036 because you had asked a related question. So through 2036, there will be money, obviously some coming on and some coming off. So through 2036, there'll be with capital improvements every couple of years, 56 coming on and 35 coming off with a net of 21. Does that make sense to you? So through 2036, about every year we do about 2 million authorizations through capital improvement program. So that is in addition to the two, I'll just call them the two major projects, the fire station and the library, and then doing capital improvements throughout the year. So you have 56 coming on through 2036, and I'm talking 14 years out, folks, but just so you know, you have 56 coming on and 35 coming off. When I say coming off, that means principal that we've paid down, which is a net of 21 million.
Did that answer your question, Councilor DeSorger, or do you have a follow-up to it?
Yes, I have a follow-up. So that's the principal, right? So, and do you have any concerns that we're maxing out our borrowing?
We are, so, excuse me, I'm just going to refer back to the presentation I'd done in September where I showed the debt limit. Okay. So what we had available on the debt limit was 22.5, and with another 5, we go down to 17.5 until we can rescind the library grant portion, which will bring us back. And that honestly is my main concern, is managing the capital through there. That's why I initially advocated for just the 5 million, because I know that there's other capital needs that we need to manage every few years. So that, and you know, the other thing that helps, which I think we all advocate for, is new growth. New growth adds to that capacity. So I'm okay with managing this, and that's what all these schedules have been about. You know, showing what's coming on, what's being paid off, and managing it within 8 to 10% of the budget, operating budget. Which we do, by the way,
yes,
so that we can maintain buildings and infrastructure and equipment. That's why we have a policy of 8 to 10% of the budget.
Councilor DeSorger.
So do you think there's any chance that this borrowing will trigger the bond council looking at this?
They could, but I can tell you for a fact that our financial advisor was so excited about our free cash. She was like, let's bond. So, because it does look good. That's all, you know.
And I wanted to note, because I don't know that I have yet, that, like I said, I met with the auditor along with the mayor and Director Gilman. And so we did have the results of the last audit from Powers and Sullivan, which is the first year that they have done the independent audit. And so I will be inviting a representative from Powers and Sullivan to come to a Ways and Means meeting, possibly in January or February at the latest, to talk about the audit. But the good news is there were no surprises, no slaps on the wrist. I thought it was a positive findings. Details about really just sort of accounting procedures that have been kind of like, these are the goals, we want to get the office to here, you know, they're things that the city has been aware of, but they're not a big deal as I see them. So I thought that was good news. It really, to me, proves that there wasn't any big surprises, you know, looming from the prior administration. So any more questions on finance or any questions for the mayor? Councilor DeSorger. Actually, if you will, I'd like to call on Councilor Elmer since he hasn't spoken in a bit.
Hi, Director Gilman, did I hear that in 2036, it's going to be like a python swallowing a large animal, and that there's going to be an unusual bump in our, I'm not even sure what it is, but it just sounded like maybe our taxes would have to go up to cover that.
No, actually, it's the exact opposite. The pension schedule ends in 2036, funding schedule. So that actually drops off a lot.
I see. Okay. So our taxes go down?
Don't know. You know, we actually, honestly, Councilor Wheeler and I've talked a little bit about directing some of that toward OPEB, you know, shifting that to OPEB.
Okay.
Yeah. Councilor Forgy and then Councilor DeSorger. Or did you have a question, Councilor Forgy?
I do, but please let Councilor DeSorga go before I do.
All right, Councilor DeSorger, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I mean, thank you. So I can't wait till 2036.
No.
I look at that and I said, oh my goodness, the retirement commitment will be over and the high school will be paid for. That'll be a great day. I had a question which I wrote about the bond premium, and this can be something that we'll take up at another time. I understood why, basically why we did that, because 5 million was what we could borrow. But I wanted to know about where that money, where it came from, and what our policy is on the bond premiums, and do we not generally use that to pay off what we owe?
So bond premium is actually governed by Mass General Law, in which until 2016, you didn't have a bond premium account. Okay. So then it became, you can use bond premium at the time of bonding, to reduce what you're bonding for, or you can put it in a special fund and use it for capital or up to 50,000 debt service on the project that it related to. So those are the rules surrounding it. I know it's very complicated, and the entity that generated the premium, example, general fund, water, sewer, GCET, it needs to stay with them. So it has to get divvied out. So we haven't had it since only I think 2017 was the first year there was some generated.
Oh, yeah.
But what we currently have came from that late bonding I was talking about with Councilor Forgy. It came from August 2019 bonding, of which the major components were the parking garage, the community center, and some other capital projects approved by the Capital Improvement Committee. So that's where that came from, I guess.
May I follow up, Councilor?
Yeah.
Wheeler?
Yes.
So do other cities, when they get that, or they could use that to pay down the principal on what was owed on those buildings, correct? Or we could have done that, but instead we would be spending it.
Correct. We are doing that. If you look at the order for the fire station, you'll see that we are doing that.
Exactly.
You can, again, I'll say that what I walked into, there was already an order sitting there waiting for me. But we got to do the library as I walked in November. So it is a policy as a city, you can choose across the board to always apply it to the borrowing. But in discussion, I'm still discussing this with Mayor Wiedegardner, but Mayor Martin had not wanted to do that as a policy. So, and there are some advantages to having the capital. There's flexibility with having it in the bond premium account.
That's right.
As well.
And so
for capital projects.
We had about $1.4 million in that bond premium account.
$1 million, yes, but some of that is water and sewer. The general fund is $1,083,000.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Councilor Forgy, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Director Gilman, I think I sent this request to you, and I don't know if it's possible for you to gauge or give us some sort of a table, but for what would the result be if we took $1 million to reduce the tax rate? Are we talking pennies, or are we talking substantial? I guess that would be my question.
Okay, it's 64 cents, but the only thing I would say to you is we've already set the tax rate.
Right.
So, okay, I just want to be clear on that.
Right. I know that, but for next year, let's just, 1 million towards the reducing the tax would end up as reducing 64 cents.
Yes, but also please realize the yo-yo effect you get into, which is not a great thing. And in fact, unless you have your reserves where they should be,
right,
and have it strategically addressed longer-term liabilities, that's not the wisest use of the funds, I guess.
And if I could follow up, please, for just a moment, you were talking about when the pension liability is gone.
Okay. Well, it's not gone. It's never gone.
Right. It's never gone. Okay. So
forward.
So what that actually means is we're not making up funds. We're just going to go with an actual on an annual basis without.
Correct.
Okay.
We're behind in funding. We have the schedule to get us caught up. Once we're caught up, we'll be going current.
And do you Is that a substantial savings?
It's 14 years out, but yes, I would say it's going to be substantial savings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we're almost 90 minutes in. We do have a recommendation to make, but we've covered a lot of ground. Do counselors have any more finance questions? Anything that occurred to you that you meant to ask about fire station? Counselor Elmer and then Counselor Forgy.
It didn't get said, so I wanted to say it, that one of the advantages, or that what makes the Coombs site attractive, is that you can drive the fire trucks in one side and drive them out the other. There's no backing up. And that I gather from, I haven't talked to any firemen, but I gather that's a big thing and a big improvement over what we had in the past and what we'll actually have in the temporary. I'm not sure about that. Anyway, it's part of the picture, and I wanted to throw it out there.
Thank you, Counselor Elmer. It's a good point. I think anyone that's ever parallel parked could imagine what it must be like to back up a fire engine. And it's something I've heard again and again. I've also heard the advantage to a single story, the cost advantage to a single story, which is possible at Coombs Ave, but not on Hope Street or some of the other locations that have been thrown out there. Counselor Forgy, did you have?
Yeah, I have to remember.
Okay.
So on tomorrow night's agenda, I'm sorry, I didn't even look at this, so I'm just questioning if I'm very prepared tonight. Are we voting on anything other than the $6 million article?
Yes.
Are we voting on the fire department radios?
No, that's. Oh wait, am I? Hold on. I'm not going to speak, but without looking.
Okay, I'm a bit confused right now. So.
I don't believe so. But where's the agenda here?
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. One moment, please.
Sure.
So the other motions and orders that we have are 3 for zoning, one of which has been retracted, and an ordinance prohibiting electioneering. The radios is in first reading still.
Okay, thank you very much.
Till later. Councillor DeSorger.
This is good news, but I think this is probably going to be my last question. This was something that came up earlier, and I don't know who this would be for. Perhaps it would be for our mayor. Perhaps it would be for Mr. Joyce. And this is totally related to the finance part of it. The Maine and Coombs site, and I would like to thank all of you for all the meetings that you've been having, trying to get this all done. But we're on Ways and Means, so we're supposed to look at the any financial ramifications that could, possibly be. So is it all set within, and I don't want you to have to say anything that, like if it's in negotiations and you can't talk about something, that's fine. But is it all set? What we're voting on this, if you find anything, is that all paid for? There's not going to be any extra, or is it in a contract that if there's any potential problems there, that's all set? It's not going to be cost the town anymore.
I'm going to throw this to the mayor. Mayor, did you get that? I think you're on mute still.
Like I say, it's probably the better place for me, but since I'm being asked a question, I'll try to answer. I'm not sure I fully understand Counselor DeSorger's question, but I think what she's asking is if we, under due diligence, find additional issues, who pays or how do we deal with that? Unfortunately, you are correct, Counselor DeSorger. We have covered that in the letter of intent, and we will plan to cover it in the purchase and sale agreement, but I really can't comment on the exact negotiation because that hasn't happened. We are hoping, because of the relatively benign use of that property for a good 50 years, that we won't find anything substantial. But it is New England, and Greenfield has never had a lot of property to do other things on. So, I mean, nobody ever expected to find an old stable underneath the underneath the parking garage. So, I'm hoping that we don't encounter any stables for sure, but any, more importantly, any contamination. And that's about all I can say. As rest assured, as we go through this process, and I am able, under the parameters of a negotiation, I will keep you guys informed, because that's what I do. So just understand that right now I can't fully answer that question, but we have covered that. We have definitely covered that. And it may be partially paid by the city. It may be part of a negotiation with the property owners, because at the end of the day, until we close, it's their property and they need to have this information as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Elmer. Oh, you're on mute.
You may have to duck this too, but do we know who's going to pay for the demolition of the properties there?
The buyer. I mean, I'm sorry, the seller. Excuse me. Fully.
Good, that's good.
Good. Councillor DeSorger, did I see your hand up?
I just wanted to say that I was hoping that whatever this allotment that we'll be voting on, that I want them to be able to build the best fire station that they can, because I think that our firefighters deserve that. I want them to have a great, safe place that takes care of them for the next 40 years or however long buildings are supposed to last, which I truthfully don't know. But so that all of that could go towards that. So I'm sure you'll be, I'm just going to figure that you're going to be writing that into what it is. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yep. I'm counting on 85 years out of this, so otherwise you're in trouble. Can I tell you? All right. Any further questions? Did Councillor Forgy, did I see your hand up, or no? Oh, okay. Okay. Are we ready for discussion just amongst the committee? Not to put you on the spot, Councillor Bottomley, but I was wondering if you'd like to start us off. I know I can see you might be having bandwidth issues. I also wanted to check in to make sure that you can hear us.
Thanks. So you want me to start off this conversation on the endorsement, or?
Yeah, I'd like to just check in with, hear where you're at.
Yeah, no, that's great. So far, based on what I've heard, I mean, we all could have wished the process was maybe handled differently or started out a different way, and maybe there was lack of oversight, but I feel a lot of that's history, and I'm really glad that that was covered tonight in depth, because I feel like it also highlights from a certain point the committees that are involved have been very diligent, and I feel like there's been a lot of oversight from this committee, from the fire committee, from the library people, from the mayor's office. I feel like there's been a really in-depth examination of a lot of different facets that involve this building process. And I think we would all admit it's not perfectly ideal, but I think the need is definitely critical for a fire station, and it's necessary for our community and for our firefighters. So I'm definitely thinking in support of this. It's really important that we maintain our facilities for the city and don't let them degrade even further into perhaps very unsafe conditions. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Other counselors have any thoughts you want to share before we vote? Any, Counselor Elmer?
I'll just say that this has been a journey for me, and I've just sort of come around to seeing what the hand is that we were dealt, and then figured that our job, given that hand, is to make sure it's managed as well as played as well as it can, to continue the metaphor. And I've come around. I'm feeling. I had lost confidence in the committee at one point, and I guess I should say for the record that I am now confident that the people who are running this job will be able to land the plane, to mix another metaphor. So that's where I'm at.
Great. Thank you. For my piece, one thing I wanted to do that I started to do earlier in the meeting and then got sidetracked was I wanted to invite Peter McIver to speak. Peter, I saw you on the call. I know you're on the Fire Station Building Committee and the head of the union, and obviously a firefighter. Do you have anything to say about this project?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I don't really have anything additional to add. You guys have had some great debate and some interesting history back and forth on both projects. I'm happy to answer questions if you had something specific, but I think everybody's kind of hit the nail on the head a couple times.
Yeah, I think my question would just be, will you be relieved to move out of the current station? And is this new potential new station something that you think you can look forward to?
That's quite a loaded question. Firefighters are wonderful traditionalists, and there's something to be admired about our 1936 firehouse.
Yeah.
But I think there's been a lot of it that's been painfully ignored over the years. Sorry, my kids are enjoying their show right now. That have led us to a place that we have to look elsewhere to continue to thrive as a fire department. And moving to a modern facility will be something that hopefully the city and the fire department and anybody that gets to have the pleasure of being involved in that project gets to look forward to. Mm-hmm. So yes, if you're asking me if I'm excited to move into a new firehouse, the answer is yes. Will there be bumps and bruises along the way? I'm sure there will be. I don't think any building project comes without, its own unique challenges, and this one has more than a few. So, I can appreciate that people have regained a bit of confidence. I think we've tried to be as public and transparent as a building committee, both the temporary and permanent committees, and I hope that the committee can appreciate that.
Thanks. Thanks for an honest answer. Appreciate it. And I share your, I don't know, bittersweet, I guess, feeling about saying goodbye to the current station. I do prefer that brick classic look. But I think we'd probably have to spend a lot more money in today's dollars to get that but I hope we can incorporate some detail at least into the new one.
Especially their opportunity to decorate it for Christmas for the last time.
Yes.
They deserve a real kudos for how wonderful it looks. Thank you for that.
They do. I actually walked by last night. It looked great. Okay. More deliberations, Councillor DeSorger?
I just wanted to reflect back on that. Thank you, Peter, for speaking. That was, for me, one of the most helpful things in arriving at this decision. That fire station definitely is substandard, but it was very helpful to hear. There were you, Peter, speaking. There was another firefighter that spoke. Is someone that wrote today, having the chief speak just on a personal level. I want you to be in a place where it's safe and a healthy environment for you, and having you speak to that really helped to make my decision. I definitely could endorse this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Forgy, anything you want to add or reflect on before we vote?
Well, at this point, my thought is it's time to move forward on this. And voting it tonight puts it on council floor where I know there's going to be more discussion. I want people to understand how difficult it was for, and I'll probably say this again tomorrow night, it was a difficult decision to make. I probably changed my mind about 12 times. However, when I hear people talk about taxes and they can't afford and everything else, I get exactly what they're saying. So part of what I'm doing right now in moving this out to council floor is to say to them, I understand what you're saying. I know that the past number of years have been very difficult on you as taxpayers. And I'm very heartened by the fact that our mayor and our finance director are planning for a more successful, more transparent budget coming forward for next year. And I think we'll all have a better opportunity to get into that budget and to try to create something that at least makes people feel more comfortable with how their tax dollars are spent. So I will be voting yes to move this out to council floor, and I'll be there tomorrow night.
All right. Thank you, Councillor, for I think advocating for that perspective and reflecting where you stand. I'm a little fried from chairing a long meeting, one in a series of long meetings. So if I have any kind of statement to make, I'll make it tomorrow. But suffice to say that it's my position that moving forward on this project as it stands now is in the fiscal long-term interests of the city, and so I do support it. And for that reason, I'll move positive recommend. I moved that it be ordered. Let's see. I'm trying to remember how to do this. I think I do want to read the order. So I move a positive recommendation that it be ordered that an additional sum of $6 million be appropriated for the construction of a new fire station, and to meet said appropriation, transfer $1 million from Fund 1627 bond premium, and the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $5 million pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, or any other enabling statute, And further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of this project. And further, in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20, the premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes hereunder, less any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to pay project costs, and the amount authorized to be borrowed for the project shall be reduced by the amount of any such premium so applied. Is there a second?
Second, DeSorger.
Seconded by Councillor DeSorger. I think we had a lot of discussion, but is there any more? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. Councillor Bottomley, as clerk, would you be so kind as to take the roll?
Yes.
Okay, so this is all those in favor.
All those in favor, Councillor Forgy,
Aye.
Councillor DeSorger,
Yes.
Councillor Elmer,
Yes.
myself, yes. Councillor Vice President Wheeler.
Aye. So that's a unanimous positive recommendation for the fire station. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for everyone that we heard from tonight. Many, if not all of whom are still on the call. Thank you for your expertise and your patience. We have no further recommendations to make. We do have a first reading. Let's see, which I will get to. It's just a city council first reading, appropriate $163,000 from free cash to purchase radios for the fire and police departments. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 19, 2021 at 5:30 p.m.
Wow.
Via WebEx. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Forgy.
Moved by Councillor Forgy and seconded by Councillor Elmer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank